Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining in and welcome for the session. We already have 220 Tech Mahindra associates joined in for the session. It's exciting to see such a great number. A warm welcome to our esteemed guests, our panelists for today's session. We are honored to have with us Donna Whittaker, Information Technology Vice President, Scotia Bank, Anoukin Hermes, Director Information Technology Quality Assurance, BCBS LA, Ananth Movva, Director Enterprise Architecture and Tech Practices, Bank of Montreal. Thanks, Donna, Anoukin, and Anantha for being with us for the panel discussion today. And the panel discussion, as all of us are aware of, it's on the role of quality assurance in digital transformation. Yeah, before we move forward for the session, just quick announcement for the participants. We are recording the session, and if time permits, we would take up few questions from participants towards the end of the session. And during the session, participants are welcome to type the questions onto the chat window. We will take that up towards the end in the last 10 minutes. Okay, so we have with us Sriniketh Chakravarthi. He is Senior Vice President, Head BFSI and Enterprise Alliances, Tech Mahindra Americas. Requesting Sriniketh to start the session with his opening remarks, please.
Thanks, Ritu. And good morning, everyone. And welcome again, Anoukin and Donna and Anantha. Excited to have you here. I think it promises to be a great discussion on the role of quality engineering in digital transformation. So I'll just set out some opening remarks. Look, as we think about this is obviously a very exciting topic, and digital transformation has become sort of the norm, and it's probably a catchphrase that we've all gotten used to now for some time. And as great as the promise of digital transformation is, unfortunately, we've seen in the world that we live in, QA and testing and so forth, that things don't necessarily go as well every time there is a promise, right? So you hear of outages and your app's not working and so forth. And this community, rightly or wrongly, is under scrutiny every time something of that sort happens, right? So I think the point that I'm trying to make is it is a very critical function. Where as we undertake this digital transformation, there's lots of things happening, and things are not necessarily working 100% of the time, and therefore quality becomes very critical. I say this, and as I look back at the quality function 5 years ago, I think people have come to recognize how critical quality is today. 5 years ago, I remember this whole narrative that as things got more automated, there was this discussion that, hey, is quality function going to become relevant, right? As things get automated, do we need the quality function and so forth? And I think if I look back, I'd say how wrong were we in terms of thinking about that function. And today, if anything, this discipline is thriving, and it is actually morphing into something much bigger and better, and it's exciting. And obviously, we are all in playing critical roles as quality professionals. So as we think about what these changes are and why today's context becomes very important from a quality perspective, as I reflect on it, I thought, let me outline the changes in sort of three broad areas, and each of these areas will be discussed by the panelists in a fair bit of detail. But to my mind, there are three big areas that are impacting quality engineering. One is what I call as agility and scalability. That's point number one. The second is I would call this, and I'll describe this. I call this the entropy in the system, right? And I'll describe what I mean by that. And the third is really on intelligence and automation. That's there. So I'll spend a few minutes on each of these. So let's take the first, agility. So clearly everyone's talking of agile, DevOps, and now increasingly as security becomes a big issue, it's DevSecOps. So what does this mean? It means that a lot of maybe some of the quality work has become left shifted, and there is some bit of unit testing that's happening within the development teams. But it does not mean that many of the functions that the testing professionals need to do has really changed, because through the whole cycle, whether it is pre-planning, dev, or through post-development, you still need to have a plan. You still need to make sure that the environment is ready, the data is ready, you have the right kind of automation, you have, and you have everything that is there that is expected out of the quality function. Not only that, the QA specialist now is expected, especially if you're building on the cloud and so forth, and each of these environments has very different tool sets, is expected to know these tool sets and is expected to know the process pretty well and make sure that you build those pipelines so that the whole agile way of working does not really stop at quality. Because one common complaint that we hear is, hey, my development side is agile, but my testing is not. So I think, to me, it means that there is an onus to be quick, but there is also the onus that while you are quick, you also are doing everything that you do with the same amount of rigor that you used to do. So to me, that's one big change that is happening. The second, and I think and a very important one, if you think about it, is what I described as the entropy in the system. And for those of you who are kind of searching their heads to really remember what entropy is, and I did that as well. So if you go back to what we learned in school in thermodynamics, it's entropy is the amount of disorder in the system, right? And that's the amount of disorder that the system has, and over time, especially isolated systems, the extent of disorder really increases. So if you think about the notion of disorder, and if you apply it to the concept of technology and how we build technology, you can see that we were in an era where they were sort of systems that are fairly monolithic, that were probably less complicated. You're moving to systems that are more independent in some ways. There are more heterogeneous components. I think you're moving from homogeneity to heterogeneity, and they're also more complex. So all of this is actually leading to more entropy in the system. There is the potential for disorder is significantly higher, which is why you see in these digital systems that the causes for outage can be very many than it was in the past. And some of these, if you think about this, it's at different layers, right? If you look at technology, the infrastructure today it can be a mix of either your old data center, it could be one of the public clouds, it could be a hybrid. And as you think about applications residing on these various types of infrastructure, it adds to the complexity of how you should think about applications behaving and how they are tested. So that's infrastructure. Then there is the application architectural principles itself. So not only are you now still testing for on mainframes, which still exist, and client server kind of technologies, but you have a slew of new technologies. There's serverless applications, there are containerized applications, there are low-code applications, there are extensive use of microservices and APIs. And each of these architectural sort of paradigms or patterns calls for a good understanding of how your application behaves and what you need to test for. So that's another dimension of complexity. Third, I think there are also, if you think about it, I think technology layers are getting many more, and you have now multiple layers in which you build technology. So you have a UI layer, then you probably have a data layer, then you have a transaction processing layer, and then you have obviously a system of record layer and so forth. So as you think about many of these layers, ensuring that what the application does through those whole layers is extremely important. So and finally there is the ubiquitous nature of data, and data has become very important. So all of these, whether it's infrastructure, applications, the number of layers, data, all of that is adding to significant complexity as far as and entropy in the system, so to speak. Right? So last thing I would say is intelligence and automation. So clearly, there's more automation. We've all seen it from test scripts and so forth. That's happening. So that will only continue. I think the exciting thing is that as we have more machine learning and AI coming in, you're able to now instrument these applications better, especially those residing on the cloud. You're able to get log data and so forth, and you can look at past patterns of your test and production and actually predict what can happen in future. And finally, I think on AI, there's also the notion of testing for AI applications as AI become mainstream. How do you test for applications that are not deterministic, right? Because they're open-ended in terms of what they could achieve. I think, how do you test for biases? I think these are opening up new avenues for testers. So clearly, I think in short, this is a thriving field. It's moving to a much more of an engineering discipline. A quality engineer now needs to know not only the various layers of applications and architecture, but they need to have a good understanding of infrastructure, the interface between applications and infrastructure. So it's clearly exciting, besides, of course, knowing the function for what you're testing. So I think I would say this in summary, the way I would describe this is that quality engineers have to move from being guardians to being custodians, right? And not just custodians, but I would say smart custodians and custodians with foresight. And to me, the analogy that I use in my head is one from this famous Hollywood movie, the Minority Report. And for those of you who have watched the Minority Report, the protagonists are able to sense what is going to happen in future and prevent it rather than wait for it to happen. So that's what I expect quality professionals to do. We should all be like the protagonists in the Minority Report. You need to be able to catch a crime of bad software early on and prevent it, right? So that's where I see this going. So look forward to an exciting conversation, and thank you everyone. Thank you especially all the external our clients for coming in and spending your valuable time. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sriniketh. Now I request Anjali Chhabra Nandwani. She is VP and Head Digital Assurance Services, TechMNxt Americas. Anjali, please start and moderate the panel discussion.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ritu, and thanks, Sriniketh, for setting the context. And now let me start with the very exciting conversation with Donna, Anoukin, and Anantha. Lot of our participants, and I recently got a message that we are touching the number 400 already. So many of TechMNxts are very excited to hear from all of you. Once again, thank you for being here with us. Let me start with the very basic, but again the most interesting aspect that is driving the whole quality engineering world. Maybe I'll start this question with Donna. Donna, yourself, if you can share some of your thoughts in terms of the whole DevOps and Agile and the impact of DevOps and Agile that we have seen over the last 3 to 4 years, maybe more, starting sometime 2015 in most of the large enterprises, how you have seen the impact and what has been your experience so far, how well QE teams have adopted to the whole Agile and DevOps side of it, and what is still left, and where are the gaps. So if you can start with those thoughts, and certainly we'll go to Anoukin and Anantha also on the same question.
Okay. Thanks, Anjali. That's a big question because there's been a lot of different ways that people have really approached DevOps and Agile. When we first started Agile, I think it was we're Agile, so we don't have to document anything. We don't have to test anything. We're just Agile. We'll just do it and put it in production. And obviously that's reality set in, and we realized that no, it's really about breaking down the silos. DevOps, Agile, when you talk full stack teams, it's really about changing the dynamics of how the team works together. So it's not, BAs go off and write some requirements and throw it over to a developer who builds something, who throws it over to testers who, at that point, we try to think about, well, how are we going to test this thing? It's really more about breaking down those walls between, so we're all together and building systems together and embedding quality right in the beginning, building things that can be tested rather than building something that we can't figure out how to test. So it's really changing kind of more the dynamics, I think, of how people work. And it's also really fundamentally changing, I think, the role of QA. Like, do we still have a role in full stack? Quality is everyone's business, we always say, right? And product teams and agile teams are super on board with that until, I think, as Sriniketh sort of alluded to at the beginning, until something goes wrong, and then it's, well, why didn't QA catch that? So, so it's kind of that dynamic there, but it really means that QA people have to be much more QE, much more engineering, very strong analytical skills, strong technical skills, strong problem-solving skills. So it's not this passive, tell me what to test and how to test it, and I'll do it. It's really being embedded right in the beginning of the whole life cycle, and just really making a better product because we're working together. We're not working in silos. I could go on for hours, but I'll let the others kind of jump in as well.
Definitely. I think, thank you so much, Donna. Anoukin, you want to share something on this, and then I know it's a very loaded topic, but I'm sure everybody has a lot to say.
You know me, I can talk for hours about QA and quality. I'm a huge advocate of it, and I'm very passionate about it. Obviously, I've been doing it for a long time, but besides that, I really feel strongly about the role of quality. And, my staff knows, I always say, I don't own quality. I'm the steward of quality. And I firmly believe that because quality isn't owned by the QA department, in my opinion. It's owned by everybody. And, I've been working with DevOps, I'll say, since maybe 2004. And it really hasn't been until the past 2 years that I've really seen it become more than just a buzzword. I think a lot of people will use DevSecOps or DevOps with continuous integration. Those things kind of go together, continuous deployment. But I agree with what Donna said. I think the way I look at it, it's an opportunity for us to shift left more. I think QA needs to be in the very beginning of everything. And, at Blue Cross, we've worked very hard in the past 4 years. We're now part of initiation all the way through post-implementation, where before it was, okay, we need QA tomorrow and we need you guys to jump in. So I think with DevOps, that will continue. I think it's a natural progression. So for me, what I find exciting about all of it is not the technology behind it, although it's great. It's the opportunity to, like she said, bring down those walls. Now, all of a sudden, we're not an afterthought. In order to get to continuous deployment, and in order to do DevSecOps, you need quality and you need the automation and the AI that goes behind it. I also agree with what was said before. There has to be a shift between the old manual testing into the more engineering kind of mindset. And, I tell everyone this, QA really hasn't changed since World War I. And I say that and people laugh, but if you think about it, it's true. We really haven't done much. Automation was, I think, the first big thing that we did about 20 years ago. But the past couple of years, it's been amazing to see we're actually starting to transform quality. And so for me, that's what DevSecOps and DevOps brings to this. It's the opportunity to continue to transform quality.
Thank you so much, Anoukin. And Anantha, I'm sure you have, again, a lot of thoughts about the whole DevOps and Agile. And yeah, we have had those discussions, and specifically around a lot of peripherals that we will discuss in a short while, non-functional test data and all those aspects. But what are your views specifically around DevOps, Agile transformation, how Bank of Montreal is dealing with that? So over to you.
Thank you. I think Anoukin and Donna have given very good insights into their experience. So in Bank of Montreal, when we introduced DevOps and automation was a concept that has been there for a while. So DevOps actually has brought in new aspects, and with that, the Agile, and Donna has rightly mentioned, no more documentation. Let's put something out there. Let's discuss a story and then build something and test it and throw it out for production. That seriously doesn't work for a financially responsible company or a fiscally responsible company, especially in banking, in BFSI, that doesn't work. So let's all not get carried away that Agile is the way you do things versus actually changing and cutting corners. So it was a cultural shock when we introduced this DevOps and partly DevSecOps into BMO. our intention was we used to have massive 4 releases a year, like R1, R2, R3 every quarter, and then our target was to go for a weekly release. And for a bank of this size, we are 200 years old, and that means it's a mishmash of several technologies and legacy platforms that are put together. And making a release every week is super ambitious. It's like it's nearly impossible if you think of it from a technological platform support standpoint. So with Agile and DevOps being introduced, that was a shocker. So I used to do my QA cycle one in like 6 to 8 weeks. Now I'm being asked to do something in 3 to 4 days in parallel with development. So how do I do it for a weekly release? Even if it's a minor release, I still have to go and do my QA and certify that nothing broke. So this brought in a lot of change opportunities for culture, technology adoption, and a mindset. The mindset to actually how to do QA. So it made us all move, as Anoukin left, think towards shift left seriously. And the role of quality assurance started gradually moving towards quality engineering. So that's when we started service virtualization. Let's look at the design specs to start with. Let's start it with architecture and how to tie it with rest of the life cycle. How do we maintain quality from architecture and the drawing board? So a lot of the times we go all the way to the end and find that our architecture doesn't support what we intend to do, and then go back to the drawing board. So these experiences, and now the role of quality assurance into a professional is actually moved to a quality engineering professional where they can deny it, but that's what is happening. Subconsciously, we are going to do that. We're going to do service virtualization. We're going to do component level. We're going to do even probably code level, broken code level testing, and then contribute to it, whether it's going to be a developer and a quality engineer put together, or it's going to be a quality engineer with development experience put together. Either way, that's going to be a blended outlook that's actually coming out, and that's where quality engineering is. And today, we have adopted, I wouldn't say very seamlessly, but out of 45 releases that we want to do, point releases that we want to do in a year, probably we achieved to 23, 24, 27, 50% a year. That means there is a lot of change that happened, and that's what we have experienced in the last 4 or 5 years.
No, thank you. That's very, very interesting perspectives on specifically DevOps and Agile and how our organizations and enterprises are dealing with that. So moving on to the same, I think the same thought process, I'll try to kind of catch on to some of the things that you said, Ananth, and maybe start with you on this question, because I know this topic is very close to your heart, which is all around the non-functional aspects, performance engineering. So that used to be like an afterthought all the time, right? We all I always used to say that we are just shy of saying that let's test non-functional aspects in production, because we used to take it to like just staging or something, and used to test all the loads and all the stress aspects and everything. Now with DevOps and velocity requirements, obviously we cannot afford to do that, and we cannot. So and you have over the last few years have in your role specifically heading the entire performance engineering aspect as well, have brought in some change, and there are things moving in a different direction and shift left of performance engineering. Let us start with you, and then again we'll go around the table taking the views on the performance engineering and shift left.
Sure, that's really close to my heart. I still remember my first delivery to one of the top 5 banks. They were about to go live. This was early 2001, 2002. They were about to go live. And I think it's 11 o'clock in the morning, Singapore time. They went live at 11. They called me to be on hand. Stay on hand. If there is a problem, I'll call you. So I was a consultant back then. And 1 o'clock, the systems came down, and then we had to bring and there is no rollback option that was really a good plan. So it's basically a 12-hour firefighting to bring it back to the N-1 current production level, and then it took 3 months to basically do performance and a lot of changes from a design perspective. So, and it costs them almost twice the money that they invested in actually putting that change in. So from speed in today's world, I mean, with the changes that we went through in today's world, we moved our perspective for performance to the design table. So if you see my alignment within the group in the bank, now I work with enterprise architecture. I used to be something called as shared services back then, but now I work with enterprise architecture and then tech practices. The reason being, we want to work towards performance, resiliency, reliability from an architecture standpoint, and then engineer the product way towards getting these aspects. So this has become one of the most critical aspects of the design and architecture itself. That means we're going to benchmark the architecture. This is something I think there are only few companies out there in the world that do it. That only IBM does it in their Pagapsi labs. Benchmarking an architecture, you really have to have a handful of super performance engineering guys to sit there and architects to sit there and benchmark the architecture. That means you're going to certify that the architecture is going to perform with these characteristics going forward 3 to 5 years down the line. And so you start doing that on your design table, then that's your orientation towards having a well-performing, application or a platform that meets the business expectation. And the QE role, quality engineers role, moved ahead of the line in the sense their involvement in this moved ahead of the line, starting well into the design review and then providing inputs into the design review. So that's been my experience, and we started implementing APM to it. That means that there is a full 360 view towards how performance is being done, how it's being monitored, how it's being given as feedback into designers and the developers, so that they know what to expect and what to put in for enhancements or changes. So that means it's become part of the life cycle versus an afterthought. And now this life cycle also is into engineering part of it versus actually getting into development. So we start way ahead early, and then we orient ourselves towards the full life cycle and a 360.
Absolutely. No, that's very, very interesting to know. And I'm sure our associates are also listening and understanding that how their role is changing, specifically the performance engineers, how they have to look at it holistically. And I'm going to Donna and Anoukin respectively after this to take their views, how their organizations and quality engineering teams are dealing with the shift left of whole performance testing. So Donna, something from you on this?
Yeah, so very much what was really just said is that, we did do performance testing at the end. It's like, oh, we're going to production in 3 days. Can you run a quick performance test for me? And, I think we all know that if there's a performance problem or a reliability problem, it's not a quick tweak. In some cases, you actually have to redesign your whole system or re-architect it. So there's only one choice, but to do it near the beginning. So you have to shift left. In the old days, we didn't really care that much because, everything was through an employee. Customers dealt with our company through employees, whether it's a branch or contact center. And yeah, the system was a bit slow sometimes. Maybe it crashed a few times, and it was annoying for the employee, but we buffered it from the customer. But now, everything is online. The customers don't have any patience whatsoever for a slightly slow system or a system that sometimes crashes. So you really have to make sure that not only is your system working, so the functional testing that we've always done, and we need to do that better, we need to do that faster, but the non-functional side of it is, does my system work well? So, as an example, my actual official title now went from VP of Quality Assurance to VP of Quality Assurance and System Reliability Office, because we really recognize that the reliability and resiliency of your system is every bit as important as the new fancy shiny object that you're putting out there. You put out a great, fabulous feature that nobody can get to, there's no value. So exactly what was just said, we need to be shifting left, even more so than functional testing in the non-functional side of things. It can't be an afterthought. It has to be built right into how you design, how you figure out how to test, and making sure every step of the way that it's performing. Definitely,
Donna. Thank you so much. Anoukin, coming to you on this one. again, non-functional performance engineering, your views, how we are, I know some of our teams are also kind of working on this, but definitely looking forward to hear from you some of your views on performance engineering and shift left.
I think performance engineering is the new QA, right? Where we talked about, they would ask us to come in the day before to test. I think now as an industry, we've sort of started to shift left, some more than others. But I think that we sort of left performance out there. It's this P word, So we've really haven't, I'll be honest with you, we haven't done the best job at Blue Cross to shift performance left as much as we've done everything else, just because of where the organization was, especially quality was when I came in. So that is what we've started working on. I'm in full agreement. It needs to be part of, just like you are upfront and designing your test cases and you're part of requirements, performance needs to be right there. We need to understand the requirements. We need to understand what we're actually testing and what the business wants us to measure. I think the other part of this is there's one aspect is us shifting left on performance, but really in order to be successful, the business has to know what they want, right? That's where we get our requirements from. And to say that, a requirement is, a background is blue, that's much easier than say, you know what, I need the login screen to come in at 2 seconds or, half a second or a millisecond or whatever. They don't understand that concept. So it's not just, I think with testing and automation, we've done a really great job in educating. Even the business will say, Anoukin, go automate it, right? They don't know what they're saying to me, but they're saying, go automate it with their hand like this. I love that. But when it comes to performance testing, right, it's a completely different ballpark. They all want to make sure that it runs fast. They all want Amazon like performance. But when we get into, okay, how many milliseconds, how many seconds, how many, what are your parameters? They don't know. So I think we need to do a better job at Blue Cross and just in the industry of helping to educate our business. In fact, hearing you guys talk, it's giving me ideas of what I want to implement or try to implement here. But I think it's imperative that we also take it and shift left and we make it as part of the quality package and not leave it, kind of on its own. And I think the other part of it is definitely, we got to educate the people that are giving us the requirements on it. I can put in all the systems in the world, but if the business doesn't tell me what they expect, I'm not gonna be successful.
Right. No, very, very true, Anoukin. And definitely, I know we have discussed this in last few meetings that there are some aspects that we have really nailed down in BCBS LA, and there are some that we are still kind of working on. This is one of those areas, but very, very interesting.
It's also a culture thing. I'm sorry, Anjali. It's also a culture thing, right? So I've been, I'm in Baton Rouge now, but I used to work in places that were a lot more, San Francisco, Austin, LA, places that are a little bit more innovative and they move faster. Right. Here, it's a phenomenal company, but the culture is extremely different. This isn't LA, it's Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So, we go a little bit slower. We are ingrained in the culture. And so, what used to take me 6 to 8 months to get an organization to a level 3 TMMI organization has taken me almost 3 years here. So I think that plays into the conversations as well. I can't come in and change everything at once because they would freak out, right? But finally got everyone, and you know what I'm talking about because you've been here, right? Now we're ready. Okay, what's the next thing? And before I can move on to AI, I have to make sure that all my processes are, standardized. So this is one of them. So I think culture plays a big role into this as well.
Right. No, I will.
Anjali, if I may take a couple of seconds, Donna, probably you'll agree with me. Anoukin, you're complaining about the duration and the change from the West Coast and in the US. Welcome to Canada. Try it out, and you'll probably be. So, I was just
financial and healthcare, right?
When I was saying it's a 200-year-old bank, and we're a mishmash of several technologies and platforms, and a lot of merger and acquisitions and whatnot. So think about giving a change. We did a survey that we wanted to change something that is rudimentally a system where we just use green screens, and it need not be. And 98% of the employees that are using that particular application got back saying that we're comfortable using this.
Oh yeah, they are comfortable.
We don't want to change.
They have to change.
Yeah, I mean, the view is I'm comfortable using it, and I don't want to change because we need to integrate it to the rest of the systems, upstream and downstream, and make more business, more money. No, that's not my problem. I'm comfortable using it. I don't want to change this. Right. Oh boy,
we're really lucky. We're really fortunate in our CIO. Her name is Sue Kozik, and she's phenomenal. She's from Seattle, very forward thinking, and in the short, I think 2.5 years she's been here, almost 3 years now. She's changed so much. So I think it really comes from leadership. It's got to be from the leaders down. Our CIO or CEO is phenomenal. He's a doctor, but he's very, very tech savvy. He knows about QA. He can sit and have a full conversation with you about all this stuff. So I think change comes from the top, obviously. But yeah, we're not in the most innovative and forward thinking industries, that's for sure. So it makes, doing these things that are innovative. And like I said, we really haven't changed since World War I. Well, it makes it even worse when it comes to some certain industries. So anyway, slow and steady, we'll get there.
Right. And now, because I'm loving this conversation so much, specifically around innovation and change and speed of change. So let me start with a question and take that whole innovation one notch up, right, towards the whole artificial intelligence word. And see, I'm like, as a QE professional myself, there is always, whenever we are talking use cases, how will we optimize this, that? There is so much being said about utilization of AI for quality engineering, optimization, coverage analysis, this, that. So I'll start with that question. Maybe Anoukin, I start with you, because that topic is, I know we have discussed it like anything in the past couple of meetings, that so much is being said, but what is the reality versus when the rubber meets the road, what all is possible versus not possible. So I'll start with you, and then I'll go to Donna and Anantha as well on the same topic, because it's very interesting.
It is interesting, and it's a passion of mine. And I've worked with other large vendors besides TechM, and I've been trying for years to come up with a way to be able to take the using AI to be able to take the, how do I want to say it, the requirements into unit testing, where it gets automated, into functional testing. The system automates it, it executes it, then it and then it goes out. So there's really no human intervention there. And talking about that now for 8 years, people kind of look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, well, how is it going to work? And I was like, well, I have absolutely no idea, but there's got to be a way for it to work, right? And it's not out there. And I'm starting to see changes in the industry where it's actually able to work. I worked with a few companies about 7 or 8 years ago that started doing this. Of course, it was very clunky. The technology just wasn't there to do it. And so being able to get to a place where we can start looking at that, it's interesting. I've started bringing it up in my organization. It is very innovative. And in fact, yesterday I had a meeting with someone who's highly technical. I really respect him in our industry, in our organization. He looked at me like I was crazy. He's like, well, how does it get in? Because they're trying to work on Gherkin, which happened, what, 5, 6, 8 years ago. So I think AI, I'm really excited about the fact that we can automate everything and make it literally, the machine does the learning, the machine writes the scripts, the machine executes, the machine understands the requirements to where we are today. I know where I'm at in this organization right now. We're still trying to get our foundations together. I think we're pretty much there. And then hopefully next steps will be to move into something else. But from where I'm sitting right now, we're not there yet, but I'm excited to see what the future holds for sure.
Definitely, Anoukin. I'm sure we will make it work someday as we move towards our maturity journey in BCBS LA quality engineering space. And Donna, I'll come to you on this one, because again, I very, very clearly remember 3 years back, right? 2 or 3 years back, we had this conversation of something around one of our offering e-analytics, which was like AI-driven optimization and identifying of trends. And your first question, and which was like an immediate one, okay, what about data? and then we discussed a lot about it, and you had a lot of views about it and the quality of data and all that. So definitely want to hear your perspective now, specifically when we are little bit closer towards getting some use cases, looking at some use cases and things like that. Little bit. I've seen that on your face. But yeah, so over to you, Donna, to share some of your views on that.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I do think there's a lot of value in AI and machine learning and in optimizing how we do things and learning better and having it kind of predict where we should focus testing, where we should focus things, because we've learned from the past that these are areas of concern and we should focus on that. We're not that far along, to be honest, in using that. And, you know, for me, there's sort of two steps to it. Artificial intelligence doesn't replace natural intelligence. So if you're not kind of thinking through how you should be designing things, how you should be testing things, how you should do things, the artificial intelligence isn't going to replace that for you. And you mentioned data. I mean, if you don't have anything for it to learn from, it's not going to learn much. So I think we have a long way to go in just kind of organizing and just really thinking through how we should do things more, and then start using AI and machine learning to remove some of that toil. But again, it doesn't replace the thinking part that's so key. Now, as a bank, you know, we're certainly using a lot of that more and more from a production perspective. You know, there's a big push on data analytics and all of that, using that to understand where our customers are heading, where the industry's heading, that kind of stuff. So I think, you know, as we learn from that, we can also start bringing that more into the QA and the QE life cycle.
Definitely, Donna. Very, very interesting perspective. And Anantha, coming to you on the same subject of AI and machine learning utilization for optimizing of quality engineering cycles. So, how do you look at it? What are your views specifically, and how, if there is something? Yeah.
There's a lot for us to look forward in terms of AI application in any of our current processes or delivery mechanisms or utilization of the data. One area that we, or in my experience that we adopted, was we use Dynatrace as the tool of choice for our APM, and that's a SaaS model. And the amount of data is massive. The data points are too massive in the sense we have almost 6 billion points of data a day. How do you interpret that? It is humanly impossible to make sense of anything in there. Nothing. So we started using AI. I mean, our first target was to consume the data and decipher it and see what can we glean out of it. By using AI, we are able to, within Dynatrace, there is an AI module that actually helps bring up stress points, pain points, observations, and also architectural suggestions and optimization suggestions. So we started creating it based on a platform and a line of business and an application, kind of a feedback into a report, and then sending it back to both our business and technology partners. In the sense, tech dev and business, they started looking at this, and 4 or 5 years prior to this, business would come and say, I'm buying this application, you need to implement it. Now it is turned around saying, I want this application, and what help can you do to help me choose the right platform, right architecture? Right. So that is where QE and AI are pushing a cultural change, a decision change, a thought process change across the life cycle. So as Donna has mentioned, who knew in her title, I think her role is now a reliability included as part of her, current job. 5 months ago, I never thought about it, and now I'm starting a unit called as the Reliability Engineering Unit within my own group. And we actually spoke to the company that works, that actually stood up Netflix networks and whatnot, and we are partnering with them to start something in BMO as a dedicated practice for reliability and resiliency. If we take the data points from such massive data pools collected, and it's out there. It's a matter of getting it organized and using the right tool to actually understand and decipher the conclusions, or take the decision points for us to consider. There is a lot to play, and our evolution from a quality engineering career standpoint or a professional quality engineer professional standpoint is to be able to adapt to the change. In a sense, we might not be the ones who will directly use an AI tool, but we will be the ones who will consume the data points from the AI, decision making or a conclusion that comes out saying, which direction will you take? This is what the data says. So that's where I see our role moving towards traditionally.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ananth. And that is a very interesting point. Just maybe I'll take 10 seconds on that. The point that you said, that I was hearing from some other industry leader as well, exactly around the same thing, that don't impose that QE teams have to build their AI solutions. Look at the entire enterprise IT landscape, and there are already on the business side, on the data D&A teams, they are building models and solutions. Let us see how we can leverage that and utilize something that can help QE teams, putting that additional onus, saying that you build your own AI strategy, AI models, utilize the data, rather than provide them help to utilize the underlying data to make better decisions by using the AI brain power somewhere else in the IT organization. And I was like, yeah, that is also an interesting aspect, that how do we leverage the other parts of the organization who have probably gone ahead on the AI journey to analyze some of the data from the QE pipeline and dev pipeline and help us make some intelligent decisions. So very, very interesting thought there. And now, because consistently I have heard that word reliability from all three of you, I'll get into a topic which is that a very, very common phrase that we hear from CIOs, right? RAM, reliability, availability, maintainability. That is my focus for all my mission critical applications. What is my RAM strategy? How do I ensure? Now, one critical aspect of this whole thing, which has always been little away from the lives of a regular quality engineer, is security. Now, so far, we have always had InfoSec teams within the organizations taking care of the whole security aspect, and many a times, in fact, as a SI, when we used to get RFPs, and even now, many times, security is out of scope for this, or security testing is out of scope for this, because there is a separate team, separate group focusing on the entire security aspects. Now, again, with the whole DevOps and velocity aspect, can we really leave that whole security testing to the end of the cycle somewhere in pre-production or staging or UAT environment and those type of things? Or there is a need to shift left? If yes, how QE organizations are dealing with that? What are the changes? And I know there are still so many gaps. So what are those gaps? So maybe, Donna, this is a question I'll again start with you and go around the table for this.
Okay. Yeah. So when you say, oh, that's out of scope because somebody else is doing it, it always reminds me of, I don't know if anyone's read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but there's a thing in there about somebody else's problem. Everything is somebody else's problem if I don't know how to do it myself. So, to me, security has never been out of scope. Somebody else may actually execute it, but it's always been in the scope of ensuring quality. You need to make sure that the thing functions. You need to make sure that it performs. You need to make sure that it's secure, that it's reliable, that it's available. So it's always been in scope. But, we've worked in such silos before that it was always somebody else's problem. But now, as we're breaking down the silos and we're bringing more teams together across, it is happening earlier on. We have tooling and things that will run to, various code scans and things like that to find out vulnerabilities and issues earlier. Still a long way to go to really, really embed penetration testing and other types of hacking and security testing really fully into our life cycle, but it's never been out of scope. How do we do it better? How do we do it more efficiently and earlier so that, again, the same with performance testing. It's not usually a quick tweak at the end of the game. So if you don't find the issues early, you're dead in the water.
Right. And definitely with your new role, additional role, Donna, on the SRO side, the reliability office, I'm sure this will become a focal point in our lives as well as your three partners. Yes.
Absolutely.
So
there's a lot of people with their hands out there that want to hack into systems all the time. So definitely it needs to be a top priority.
Definitely. So Anoukin, coming to you with this same question specifically around the security, DevSecOps, is it really happening in the way it should be? What are the gaps? Where do we as quality engineering professionals have to put our brains into to make sure that that security gets embedded as part of the QE lifecycle?
So yes and no, and there's three parts, and hopefully I remember this because my memory is shot. But first part is, the sec part of DevOps is a new thing, right? And I think many people are still struggling to figure out how to insert it, just because it is quite complex. Something I'm really proud of at Blue Cross is our security department. They are phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And we actually have a lot of penetration testers here. And in fact, one of my peers told me, he's like, as soon as a penetration tester comes on the market, Louisiana Blue Cross grabs them. So we have, I think, all of them, potentially. But I think there's a couple of sides to it, right? We're, again, if you think of security, because of their expertise, it could be very siloed, right? Where we've broken down a lot of silos where it comes to that. Security is kind of like a cloud, right? We really kind of don't know what they do. We just know they keep us safe, kind of thing. And so the DevSecOps piece is going to start to bring them into the fold. However, what we've done is we have a phenomenal lady on our team. Her name is Wani, and Wani, we've actually sent her to security training. So she's actually got some certifications that our security people don't have. So what we've been trying to do is really embed a lot of our people into what we call our operational areas. And one of the big areas is security. So not only do we have security doing their thing as part of regular operations and application development as consultants and as testers, we also have Wani there. So Wani will also take a look at it. And from our perspective in our organization, we have many different, we have about 3 or 4 QA groups that are special for their business unit, as you know, right? And so, but we own quality. I own quality. And so our test plan is all inclusive. So it includes everyone, no matter where you're testing. And a part of that is security. So we account for all of that. I think as we shift to DevSecOps, it's going to be more important that we include them in the beginning and not just the way we're doing it today. So I think we have a lot of room to grow there. But I think a lot of it has to come out. We actually have to understand what they do. So for us to be able to have someone that has that security knowledge in QA will help to sort of bridge that. That's the goal anyway.
Definitely, Anoukin, thank you so much. And Anantha, this is, I'll come to you now on this exactly the same topic of security, your views, how in Bank of Montreal, some of the aspects are being dealt with. Is shift left really happening? Where are the big gaps, if any?
So there are a lot of gaps. One, because it's an after fact that we used to engage the pen test consultants / pen test specific companies. Actually, in Canada, there's a very famous there's a company called TELUS, which provides pen tests, and that's one of the biggest labs in North America, where even Microsoft comes for some of their code pen tests. So we have to actually outsource it to them. And now with the change and quality engineering being part of it, we slowly started moving it up the chain and introducing a security-based approach towards testing itself. One of the teams that I lead, which is API and shared component certification, they actually do it from the ground up in a sense. So we start with the basic code level, And then we have certain standards that we defined for AI to be adopted. In the sense, if I'm going to call a function a certain thing, I'm going to adopt a certain standard to make sure that the function is across the enterprise, it's the same, so that my AI engine can catch. And the same thing with my security protocols and my security syntax. So we actually implemented that since March of this year. This new team started doing that specific aspect on a component level, and then take it up the chain into a full system, along with upstream and downstream. So we started adopting it, and there's a long way to go.
Right. No, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, that whole security testing. One very interesting aspect that I was, again, we were in some discussion with one of our customers, and there was, during some conversation, a data point came that it seems 25 to 30% of security hacks are actually due to the vulnerabilities injected in the code by developers. And one of the biggest one is Stack Overflow, that we all know. We all hear that Stack Overflow causes security threats, and which can be easily arrested by something like a static testing type of incorporation, and making sure that the best practices of coding and development are, but how seriously teams are doing it and whether that is really happening is the key to knowing it versus actually making a use of that knowledge is where at times the gaps also come in. So very, very interesting conversation. I'm loving this discussion so much, but in the essence of time and making sure that 400 plus associates who are there right now get an opportunity to ask some of their questions, I need to shut up and I will hand it over to Ritu and make sure that some of the questions from our associates are answered. Thank you so much again. I really, really enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure everyone who's there from Tech Mahindra, all TechMNxt loved to hear all the perspectives, and we really enhanced our knowledge in understanding what actually is happening within our customer environments. So Ritu, over to you. We have close to 10-12 minutes before we can get into the closing remarks. We need to leave 5 minutes specifically for the closing remarks.
Sure, Anjali. So I have received few questions on my personal window. First question is for Donna. What has been the impact of COVID situation on your QE teams?
Good question. Same impact on all of our teams, really. I mean, we started off thinking, oh, we probably should start doing a slow approach into a BCP because at some point we may have to start working from home. And then as we're thinking about it, and we had this nice little plan that stretched out for several weeks. It was on a Friday. They said, no, you know what? Starting Monday, just everybody works from home. So all of a sudden, we're all working from home, as you can see. And it was amazing how seamlessly we went into it, actually. You know, we were lucky that we had done a lot of investment in infrastructure beforehand. So our big worry was nobody would be able to log in, our VPN connections would be unstable, our bandwidth wouldn't be enough. And all that was really super seamless. And we were so super busy at the beginning because in Canada, there was all sorts of customer relief programs being put in place to help people in this super trying time. So everybody was super busy. They didn't have time to kind of think about, you know, oh, like, what do I do? I'm working from home and working from the office, whatever. They were just super busy. And our team stepped up amazingly well. Like, it was really quite unbelievable. And I actually have to thank TechMNxt specifically that, you know, it was even harder for our offshore people in India. I think you had like 4 minutes notice. And yet within a couple of weeks, everybody was enabled and working from home and able to be productive. And in the meantime, our onshore team, you know, who were right there with us and helping to continue to deliver. And what I actually found is sort of a anecdotal after the fact is that it actually gave everyone the opportunity to really step up and show what they could do. So, you know, because you're working from home, there's a bit more of an independence to it. You're expected to kind of think on your own and solve things on your own and as well collaborate with your team. But they really moved more from a passive, you know, tell me what you want me to do when you want me to do it, being front and center and driving things, and much closer partnership, which is kind of ironic given that we're not together in the same room anymore. We're all over the place, and yet we're actually working together almost better than when we were in the same room. It's been an interesting journey, but I think we've actually come through it very, very well. Do you want me to say more?
No, thank you so much, Donna. That's enough and great. Thank you so much. And participants are great to give the leader's name as well, whom they want to ask the question. The another question is, what is the general view? This question is for Anantha. What is the general view of uses of open source tools within banking, financial services, or healthcare industry? How stringent are the security policies? Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, I got it. So, again, as I said, we are a bank, or any financial services industry, or any company that's within this BFSI sector is extra careful in what we work with. And there is one or other security breach that happens, and we see in the news. A lot of the tools, open source as they're great. They're not expensive. I mean, there is no money involved in this, so pick it up and use it. So it becomes very hard for the bank, for companies like banks to. We are not technology companies. We are in the business of taking money, making money, and then we take, we use technology to manage that. That means open source is great, fantastic, but I don't know how much is involved, what is involved in trying to adapt to them. So we always try to push the liability, manage the liability. The same thing with the tools. So open source tools are great, but when we want to adopt them, there is a liability attached to it. It's an open source. So we always look for something that comes with the liability guarantee, So open source tools are not great in that area. And also the fact that reliability and support. As much as we like adopting technology, we have to do it very cautiously. So from a security standpoint, there is a lot of flag, there is a lot of research that goes in before selecting a tool. So on an individual level, like we give a free hand for developers and developer desktops and the cordoned off networks and their virtual assets to use these tools. But beyond that, if you want to put that in an enterprise scenario, the chances are very low, very, very low that we adopt to something open source on an enterprise scale. We always look for partners who stand by to provide. And again, we don't want to innovate something and own it. It will become a drag at a later point of time because we are not a technology company. We use technology to help banking. So, that's the approach that I have seen. And I don't think that's going to change. But as we move into open APIs and open banking platform, probably there will be a shift in how we look at it. But again, who owns the liability? So we always want someone who will be hand in hand with us to owning the liability and giving that, I'm here kind of a prospect to the product or the tool that we're using. So that's probably going to take some time.
Thanks, Anantha. So there is next question for Anoukin. Is it okay for QE teams to depend on service virtualization for end-to-end testing, or is it more for use by development teams for early integration testing?
So the only part of that sentence that I don't like is depend. I don't think that anyone should depend on virtualization for anything. I think it's a great tool to use. I don't see why you couldn't or you wouldn't. I would still say it doesn't replace, kind of goes back to what Donna was saying. It doesn't completely replace the person and the intelligence that goes behind that person. So using the virtualization, I think it's a great way, to be able to test and kind of take a look at, get a preview of what you're looking at. I don't think it replaces, I'm a huge advocate of ad hoc testing I don't think it replaces that. So I think it's a great tool, but I do not think that it's something that you can depend on, but.
Right. No, very, very true. Just maybe again, a 5-second injection that has been always like like a struggle, right? In a sense, to shift left, while we use service virtualization, when it actually comes to the end-to-end integration testing, is it really like trustworthy enough to depend on pushing something into production with a virtualized system being part of your end-to-end testing game? And yeah, that there is that, and very rightly said, Anoukin, that we cannot depend on that. It's a tool to help arrest something early, but again,
I think we just need to be very, very careful. We've got all these great new words, service virtualization, we've got AI, DevSecOps, we've got these great words. But at the end of the day, nothing replaces the work that we do. So even if we become fantastic and we're all robots and, everything is AI and everything is, we're not testing anything or doing whatever, ultimately, even if there's like 50 developers to 1 QA or whatever it is, there still needs to be that check, that So I just really want everyone to kind of just be aware of, we can use these tools, and we should use tools to make things go a little bit faster, but don't use these tools, because again, the word depend kind of freaks me out a little bit. If you start depending on tools like this to replace what you're doing, there's going to be an issue. You're going to get out to production, and it's going to be a scenario that no one even stopped to think about because the machine didn't learn it. So let's use the tools to help us speed up and increase the quality in what we're doing. And I don't just mean testing. When I say quality, I mean the quality of it. But none of this stuff should replace the actual work that we do. It may go from 8 developers to 1 QA, but you still have that 1 QA kind of taking a look at everything. So that's my only sort of warning that goes off in my head when I see words like depend on. I don't want to depend on anything.
No.
Yeah, and I'll just say from it's the way the word, it was almost like a yes or a no answer, and there's just no yes or no answers ever, right? It's not yes, use virtualization, service virtualization 100% of the time, or 0%. Use it for what it's for, which is a lot of early testing and catching things early. Or if you've got a very well-defined system that maybe is a vendor system that costs you an absolute fortune to have a real thing there, you can use it in some aspects of end testing. But you always have to be thinking about, what am I testing? What do I need to have in my environment in order to test it thoroughly? And you have to think.
If I may take
yeah, sorry, Ananth, I was
if I may take a second.
That this subject is so close to your heart too. Managing the service virtualization. Right.
No, we went full production in the sense we support our entire service tier with SV, and there are specific cases, Donna, as you mentioned. We can't pay Equifax for a second line, to do our testing in multiple environments. When we want to do parallel testing, you have to adapt to something like that. And again, we cannot pay, TSYS, which is the only card service provider in North America, the biggest guy. We cannot provide them. They are not, even though we want to pay, they're not ready to give a second line. That's it. They say, this is my QA. You want to use it. And you cannot run performance. You cannot run anything beyond a couple of connections. So, and you want to do parallel development and parallel, releases across lines of businesses for a common shared, component like this. It's well defined. So we actually do pick our choices on what we say that, okay, this is tested with SV, we are good to go live. Things like this, it's a TSYS or a Equifax or, or a CRA call. So things like that are well defined and no changes being expected. Even our credit cards, some of the issues that we actually work with, actually moved on to the LVTS system. So there are cases. Again, there is no yes and no answer, as Donna mentioned. Pick and choose. What are you testing? You're testing something that's involved in the flow. You better go do your early testing with SV, but you better have the real deal when it comes to the end of it. You are very well concerned with something like a TSYS or a credit check call or something like that. Well, they're not going to change. So you are going to go ahead and use. There is no other option. You have to use something like that. Either it's a developer-written stub or a virtualized service that's provided by the vendor itself.
Good. No, that is very interesting, very interesting aspects on service virtualization. I think Ritu, how much ever I know there are more questions. I'm pretty sure, but we have to respect the timelines, and we are very thankful to Donna, Anoukin, and Anantha for taking out 1 hour 15 minutes. So I will leave this last 5 minutes. We wanted George to actually share some of the closing remarks and the thank you part of it, and definitely we are very thankful, at least from my side. And George, over to you and to share some of your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Anjali, and morning, Donna, Anoukin, and Ananth once again. I'm sure that I'm doing something very unfair. Such a energetic, engaging, passionate discussion. I'm sure that there is 450 plus TechMNxts out there is going to hate me to stop this. But like Anjali said, we have to respect the time. I think from Tech Mahindra point of view, we can't be more thankful to you, Donna, Anoukin, and Ananth, the time that you spent with us today and sharing. So inspirational. And so I would say what I loved about most of this is the pragmatism and the real life examples that you brought. I like what you said about, the AI is never greater than NI, natural intelligence, or, human intelligence. I would imagine, or rather we call it augmented intelligence even today. It hasn't reached a stage, but I know Anoukin is dreaming at a time where it's going to go end-to-end automated. So I think very nice to hear these views. And I think if I had to look at Anand, you have been full of experience starting from your journey in Singapore and going into Dynatrace. I think there is so much of perspectives that come out is useful to our TechMNxts on their real day-to-day life. Again, wanted to really thank all of you for the time spent. I know that there will be a lot more questions. I'm sure that we would be very happy to do these sessions again. But again, once again, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today. And again, thanks for everyone who joined this conversation. I know that you have your busy work and day work, and I'm sure that getting to this conversation get benefited. Really appreciate all the associates and leaders be part of this conversation. Thank you.
Sure. And as 2 minutes, maybe seconds from each one of you, Donna, Anoukin, and Anantha, just for our associates, and maybe a closing remark from your side each, please. Donna, starting with you.
30 seconds. I just want to thank everybody for really stepping up and helping us to move forward. And I think, more and more we're starting to try to think more with curiosity and problem solving and analytical skills, and less around the passive, manual tester mindset. So, we look to you guys for expertise and help, and just keep doing it.
And we would never want to disappoint you, Donna. We will try our best never to disappoint you.
Absolutely.
Okay, Anoukin.
30 seconds. Okay, let's see. First of all, I want to say thank you for having me. It's truly an honor to be here. I'm very passionate about quality, and anytime I get to talk about it and people don't interrupt me or fall asleep, because it's a great opportunity. So thank you very much for having me. And we are a huge proponent of our partnership. We have great onshore coordinators, offshore coordinators. I mean, the things that we've done with our team in the past 3 years has been absolutely amazing. I'm very much looking forward to the future. What I would like to see and encourage everybody is, we are partnering with you guys because of your expertise and because you are a level 5 TMMI organization. Don't be scared or, intimidated or, whatever about coming to us about things that we should be looking at. If you're still doing manual testing and you think we need to be doing AI, I'm making something up, please talk to us about it. We really want to continue to be partners, and we're really looking for you guys to help us push that forward, because you're more in the industry than we are, right? We're sometimes very much focused on where we are and what we're doing. So I really look forward to continuous collaboration. I work very closely with Anjali and would like to see more of that. But again, thank you so much for having me. It was truly an honor.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Anantha, to you, I know we have worked with you, and we have more and more aspirations in collaborating much more in Bank of Montreal. But yeah, we still have been a partner, and our associates would definitely love to hear from you what you expect them to do to be a better partner.
I'll draw something from my own experience. Everyone in this call, as you just heard Anjali say, you are partners. You are not offshore resources or augmented resources or bodies. You are partners. I'll give you from my own examples. The moment I started treating all my partners as real partners in the last 6 years, I had zero attrition from my GR partners, zero. There were instances where some of my consultants were offered a lot of significant amount of money, and they didn't want to leave. And I'm very proud of it. And I want you guys to feel like that and live that. You are partners. You shouldn't be afraid. And it is a road traveled both the directions. And we exchange views, and we work together. I really do not enforce a line of authority or a delivery chain. It's a free to open work, and do not be afraid of bringing things that you think will help any one of us do our work better, or anything adjacent to it to be made better. That's how you're going to make your mark. That's how you'll explore. That's how you'll learn. That's how I will learn. So enforce a partnership mindset, irrespective of whether it's in quality engineering, quality assurance, or development. You are going to be a very valuable asset, and we are going to be a valuable asset to you. So it's mutual. So please adopt to that mindset. It is not offshore, onshore, a vendor resource. Adopt that mindset and bring yourself up, and do not, underestimate yourself. Do not be afraid. Please.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ananth.
It's so encouraging, all of you, to have you all with us. And I'm not sure, Sriniketh, are you still there? Maybe 30 seconds.
There.
I'm there.
Yes.
I just turned off the video. No, I'd say, first of all, thank you, Anoukin, and Donna and Ananth. I think great insights, practical insights as well. I mean, that was awesome. So I'm grateful for the time that you've spent with the associates. I'm pretty sure our associates are very charged up in the art of the possible. I think it's great to hear, that human intelligence will matter, will continue to matter, but will need to live with the teams and make the outcome and the output better. And so I'd say, and I think, Donna, you said this, right? You have to be curious. You have to be problem solving in the mindset. I think that's what it boils down to. The tools are there. The technologies are there. I think the opportunities are there. And QA and testing, given all that's happening, is in a great place. So just go out there is what I would tell all the associates. The time is now, and just be proactive and see what you can do to change the world.
Okay, Ritu, we can close the session, I believe. Over to you, please.
Thank you, Anjali. We are on time, and we close the session. Thank you, Donna, Anoukin, and Anantha for being with us for the insightful, energetic, wonderful panel discussion. With this, we are good to close the session. Thank you, participants, for being with us.